Well, it is a pleasure for me. I am going to talk about today about a variety of English. Actually, it's a Creole from one of the English colonies, Guyana. I chose this particular place because I like it very much. It is in my subcontinent, South America, and I would really like to be part of uh, our institutions in South America, our associations like politics, economy, sports, culture, etc. Despite it belongs to South America, it is part, alongside with Suriname and French Guyana. They don't participate in the political and um, sports or other kind of uh, representative policies of these places. So they are part of kind of the Caribbean in Central America. I like this place, Guyana, and I am going to speak about Guyana's Creole. I prepared a PowerPoint presentation about some specifications and details about Guyana's Creole, and here we go. Guyana's Creole. The Guyanese Creole are more commonly referred to by its native speakers as Creolese, the mother tongue of 700,000 inhabitants in the Republic of Guyana. See, as I said, is in the north part of South America, and it is widely used, this vernacular language, understanding as vernacular, that the language that has been part of a process and now it is established with all its modifications in some part of the world. Um, the Creolese is spoken, and there are different kind of Creolese in Guyana, but the Guyanese Creolese standard is well known all over the place. And actually, it is taught in schools as well. And uh, continuing with this, we're going to start or continue talking about some information or general information about this Creolese, which has been modified and transformed by the contribution of other dialects like Arawak, Caribbean, um, Bhojpuri, Akan, Kilongo, Yoruba, Dutch, and of course, because of the closeness, Spanish, French, and Portuguese have definitely contributed to the construction of this Creole. There are many variants of this Creolese in Guyana, despite everybody speaks the Creolese standard, as I said. This language variety has a high degree of variability, primarily because it's caused by an ongoing contact with the major contributor lexifier English. The linguists such as Bickerton and Rickford have previously described the language variety as existing on a continuum which has conservative or biselectal, understanding biselectal as remote Guyanese Creole on one end, acrolectal, closest variety standard Guyanese English on the other end. Talking about its history, in 1531, Diego de Ordaz was the first Spanish to step foot on Guyana and started a settlement with 2,000 Spanish inhabitants. But of course, talking about the Corso, La Patente de Corso, and the Dutch and the English heard about the famous El Dorado. It could be there in the Guyana's territory, and so they started invading and they started importing, having troubles and wars against the Spanish. Finally, the Dutch and the English won. They started importing Africans and later on Chinese and Japanese and Indians to work in the field, especially in the mines, looking for gold. Finally, due to um, big struggle, big war, not war, but discussions between the English and the Dutch, finally they agree through a treaty to in 1814 that the territory is going to be granted to the English Empire. Talking about phonology, Creolese is closer to Spanish than English in this matter because it has evolved in a way that the writing is almost equal to the speaking. For example, this is a way that I go do it. It means I am going to do it or I am going to do it. Another way, every day me I ran a rice field. Literally every day I ran the rice field, meaning every day I take care of the rice field. Taking into consideration these modifications here that we're going to analyze in the next slides. Talking about syntactical Creolese, we may say that the Creolese statements differ from the original English. For example, in Guyanese Creole, to repeat adjectives and adverbs and make emphasis in the statement on or the words that uh, the person who is speaking is trying to emit. For example, if we say the word or the statement, this water, the cold, which means the water cold, we can see that we repeat the the adjective cold, which the only one goal to emphasize that indeed it is cold. But they use the double word, they repeat the word cold to make this said emphasis, and they don't use adverbs, for example, like very or extremely or something like that. Or for example, come now instead of come right now. Um, Another interesting fact about syntactic this Creolese in syntaxis is that they don't have any kind of gender in, they make emphasis in the gender, but at the moment to speak, they don't really take or care about these specifications. For example, they will say, my husband who was in England, she was my fiance by then. Or my daughter who is in the bathroom, he will come out right away. So they don't make emphasis um, in the gender when speaking in these examples that I present you in standard English to understand. Uh, Talking about morphological Creolese, for example, we may say a very good example here, talking about the pronouns, no? For example, here, um, we can see the examples in the pronouns in standard English and in Creolese. They use the possessive pronoun instead of the pronoun here. Me, you would be you, he, they suppress the H and remaining only the E. They use here a kind of influence from Spanish, which we pronounce the word as we speak or as we read it. See, and they got that influence with the I, which sounds E in Spanish, and they suppress the E in English from the English alphabet. We, our, you all, I, you, and they, them. We'll have a close look to these differences in the next slides. According, I think this classification of this Creolese is inside the mayor's classification of African American Vernacular English, and it goes to a standardization process in spoken and written usage in Guyana. Must be seen as a distinct variant from the other Caribbean Creoles, and the role of this Creolese substract in this formation of the emergent written standard in Guyana. The approach is corpus-based, using material from the Caribbean component of the International Corpus of English, and occasionally from other digitalized text database. All comparisons will be according to GA model. For example, I go do it, meaning I am going to do it, or I am going to do it. We can see that the Creolese will transform the sound of the pronoun I and only remains the A, taking this influence from the Spanish, I would say, because of the closeness to Venezuela. Actually, the Venezuela claimed Guyana as their territory. Actually, some groups of people still claim Guyana as their territory. That's why in some years in the past they tried to stimulate people to speak Spanish, to try um, to pretend to Spanish to be the first primary language, etc. So if we say I in English, it will remain the A for the first singular pronoun. And they add the consonant H. So instead of I, we have A. We can see as well that the conjugation of the verb to be is suppressed. We have no is or am in this case. And we see that the structure going to or gonna in the American version is reduced to the first two letters, B. In this case, we got I go do it instead of I am go or going to do it or I am gonna do it. We can also see that the words change and they are reduced to a minimal in easier expression. To emphasize the word is repeated of using very or extremely or similar adverbs. Like as we said in previous slides, this water is call. See, this would be a short version of this plus water, which is a kind of transformation of the word water. If we can take a look of the American Standard English, they won't pronounce water, they will pronounce water. So this is a way how this kind of water has been, establishing itself, settled down in the Creolese, remaining water instead of water. Uh, it's interesting here because instead of conjugating the word or the verb to be to say this water is cold, um, they won't say that and they won't conjugate. They will remain with the verb be, and they will change it. Instead of be, they will replace it by the. Would be something like translated into Spanish would be esta agua ser fría fría. This water be or the. In this case of Creole is the cold. And finally, in the word cold, they will suppress the D by, and they will remain only cold. So we have this water, the cold. Talking about pronouns, well, as I said, they will suppress the last sound of I, in this case, I, E, and they will remain with the A. In the case of you, in the second plural person, you all, they will put first the all, suppressing the double L and remaining only the A, and then you, which they write with an Y, a U, and H, IU. In the case of he, Creoles eliminates the H and remains the vowel E, pronounced in English alphabet, which would be only E. In the case of they, TH is replaced by D, and then the Y replaces the M. It is replaced by the M. In the case of we, they add the vowel A at the beginning to be something similar to the construction of IU. All we, in this case, todos nosotros. In the case of she, for example, I think the Spanish comes again with its influence, and instead of the E here, which sounds E in the English alphabet, is going to be replaced by the E from the Spanish alphabet. So instead of she with an E or A in Spanish, we have a she with an E in Spanish alphabet. And I think, well, as the other cultures the situation of the Creolese, of course, as in all conquests in the world, had a very bad consequences for the population because, well, the appearing of a new culture, of a new language, changes, of course, all the spectrum of a society because of domination, because of ambition, because of power. So many cultures um, set their eyes on Guyana, and that's why the local culture, the local languages, the local food, the local manifestations were every day eliminated. Um, Nevertheless, in 1953, started a kind of changes, like the people started with a universal voting and trying to get their voice raised against the English Empire. Um, because they were a very poor and not developed society. There were a lot of conflicts as well because of the Cold War supported by the US, because a lot of socialist groups were trying to get to power. And then finally, in the 1970s, they got their independence from the English. And let's hope, well, this society be uh, good, be rich, be developed. Recently, I knew they discovered oil, so that's going to be a very good if they can manage it very well for that society. Thank you very much.